Morbidly beautiful radio. We horror.
Did you hear the one about the man who can't be destroyed? He was buried alive.
What more can you do to a human being? This is inhuman. He's got to be crushed just under the weight of that much dirt.
He was set on fire.
What the hell is going on? Come on! Come down! The cat's get on fire!
They carried him away. But he keeps coming back. Don't be afraid. Be terrified.
As I lay me down to sleep, I pray my soul is mine to keep. My soul can never step outside this bed, never into all evil. Now back from the dead.
Are you scared?
Be here.
And welcome to another episode of the Calling Hours Horror Podcast on Morbidly Beautiful Radio. Once again, it is I, your head undertaker, the dead man Michael Jones of MorbidlyBeautiful.com, Coffin Cuties Magazine, and Digital Dead Magazine. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? I'm sorry we did not have a show last week. Was not feeling exactly the best. But we come back this week with a great show and a great topic. As our special guest this evening at our 8:30 interview, we will have fellow podcaster Dave Maresca from the Hollow9ine Network, director Shawn Burkett, most recently of Don't Fuck in the Woods and the upcoming Don't Fuck in the Woods 2, podcaster Jennifer Cifuentes of #Dead and the Hollow9ine Network, as well as writer Argalin Darkscares of Morbidly Beautiful. And tonight, we will be discussing how marijuana is portrayed in horror films, as well as how stoners are portrayed. And I find this to be another interesting, taboo kind of subject. It's funny how all the other drugs are treated so seriously in films, and yet to this day, marijuana and people that use it are continually looked at as jokers or people that are not serious. So I'm kind of, while the discussion will probably be very fun and lighthearted, I hope that we scratch the surface on not all people who smoke are idiots. So it'll be a fun conversation, to say the least. In our Digital Dismemberment Spotlights this evening, we will be covering Anchor Bay Entertainment's 3-disc DVD of Dario Argento's Susperia, as well as Scream Factory's Blu-ray release of Tales from the Crypt, which was part of a double feature with The Vault of Horror. We will also be hearing from 3 bands in our Metal Massacre Spotlights this evening. In fact, let's get to our first one right now. The name of the band is Devilment, the CD is To the Mephisto Waltzes, and the song is Full Dark, No Stars. welcome back. You just heard the band Devilment. The CD was To the Mephisto Waltzes, and the song was Full Dark, No Stars. Devilment is a British gothic metal band originally formed in late 2011. The band experienced problems finding a stable vocalist until Danny Filth from the extreme metal band Cradle of Filth joined in. Make sure to head on over to their Facebook page and to their official website to find out when the band is touring, how to pick up their merchandise, and their CDs. Coming up in just a little bit, we're going to have our feature interview with podcasters Dave Maresca and Jennifer Cifuentes of the Hollow9ine Network, director Shawn Burkett of Don't Fuck in the Woods, and of course Argalin Darkscares, fellow writer at morbidlybeautiful.com. But before that, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for some digital dismemberment. And in our first digital dismemberment spotlight this evening, we're going to be covering Anchor Bay Entertainment's release of the 3-disc limited edition of Dario Argento's Susperia. Now, just for you, those of you that don't know, the film was, of course, directed by Dario Argento. It was produced by Claudio Argento, and the special effects were handled by Hermano Natali. The cast includes Jessica Harper, Stefani Cassini, Flavio Bucci, Miguel Bozé, Barbara Magnolfi, Susanna Giovaccoli, Eva Axon, Udo Kier, Joan Bennett, as well as a host of others. Now, just to give you an idea of the premise of the film, Jessica Harper stars as Susie Banyan, a young American ballet dancer who arrives at a prestigious European dance academy run by the mysterious Madame Blanc and Miss Tanner. But when a series of bizarre accidents and horrific crimes, including what Entertainment Weekly calls the most vicious murder scene ever filmed, turns the school into a waking nightmare of the damned, Susie must escape the Academy's unspeakable secrets of supernatural evil. And I have to admit, now I have not picked up the 4K edition of this film, but to me this, up until these new editions, this was definitely the version of this film to own. And the question is where to even begin. Spoiler alerts, just to give you a little bit more of the plot idea. Susie shows up at the school to start her dance lessons, and odd things begin to happen. People disappear, get murdered, and all hell breaks loose. The opening death scene is an incredible piece of writing and acting in and of itself. The gore in the film is as follows. A face is pulled through a window. The same person is stabbed in the gut and the chest with a knife several times, stabbed in the heart. There's a fall through a stained glass window and being hung with a telephone cord. There's impaling with glass, maggots falling from the ceiling, throats bitten out by a dog, dogs feasting on a dead body. They're slashing with a razor, a room full of razor and barbed wire, more straight razors, a bat is killed, and a witch gets stabbed in the throat, and a reanimated corpse comes back to life. Now, Argento uses blood, but his greatest gift is his eye behind the camera. The way it roams across the screen really helps to set the mood, and his use of colors just helps to enhance it. The soundtrack may be one of the most recognizable of all time also, and I would put that right up there with the Halloween theme. This is the first in the Mother's trilogy, and this is a movie that everyone should own whether you like Argento or not. This is a film that has inspired many movies since and set a bar that very few are even close to coming equivalent to. Even Argento's later films, very few touch this one. Now this particular release has a wealth of special features and extras. Special features include an international trailer. Its letterbox has very light grain, and it primarily contains stills from the film and runs about 2 minutes. There's a US trailer that's also letterboxed, and this one is crystal clear. Now this has different scenes from the film and runs about a minute 20. There's a TV spot that contains a full-screen, slightly grainy commercial of the film. There are 3 radio spots, each running about 30 seconds long. There's the Demonia music video. This particular featurette runs 6 minutes and 8 seconds. It is a letterboxed video that is a remake of the Susperia title song. The video is very well done and has visuals like the movie. The song has a gothic black metal feel to it, so I find it to be very cool and worth watching. On disc 2, there's a Susperia 25th anniversary featurette that's about 52 minutes long. It's broken down into 9 chapters and is a combination of English and Italian with English subtitles. The program startup menu, when this opens up, it shows various scenes of the film and runs about 23 seconds. There's a behind the scenes on the story of the movie that runs about 5 minutes. This has interviews with Dario Argento and Dario Nicoletti discussing various aspects of the film. Argento talks about the locations that he scouted, and Dario tells a story of something like this happened to her grandmother. She also expresses that Alice in Wonderland, Snow White, and Bluebeard inspired her to write the story. There's a featurette on Argento that runs about 7.5 minutes. This has Stefani Cosini, Jessica Harper, Udo Kier, Luciano Tovoli, and Claudio Simonetti talking about working with Dario. They all speak very highly of him and talk about some of his other films that they have enjoyed as well. There's a segment on the stars that runs about 6 minutes. This has Argento talking about the stars of the film and how he discovered them for the film. It also contains the stars talking about one another and how much they enjoyed the experience of working together. There's a featurette on the score. This segment runs about 6 minutes 45 seconds. This has Argento and members of Goblin discussing the music for the film. They all feel that it is the best score that they have ever made, and they discuss the different techniques they used in the studio. There's another featurette on the style of the film. Now this runs about 12.5 minutes, and this has the cast and crew talking about the visual style and techniques that Dario used in the film. Argento says that he was influenced visually by Walt Disney's version of Snow White. They also discuss the fact that they begged the company to be able to use Technicolor for the film. He also comments on the fact that it was very expensive back then to do the film the way that they did because of the technical research they had to do with the lighting. He also wanted younger girls for the film between the ages of 10 and 12. He says he used many tricks to make the actresses seem younger than they were. Every member of the cast comments on the use of lighting in the film. There's another featurette entitled Favorite Scenes and Anecdotes, and this runs about 7 minutes. In this one, the cast and crew talk about their favorite scenes and amusing stories from the set. Some of the funny stories include how the actors and actresses all spoke different languages and little things like that. The end is the scene that almost everyone talked about the most. Bridget Fonda is even quoted as saying that Susperia is one of her favorite films, and it is the reason that she got into cinema. There's a looking back segment. This runs about 5 minutes and 20 seconds, and this is, again, the cast and crew looking back fondly on the film, each other, and Dario. Now there's a booklet that comes with this entitled Dario Argento's Susperia. This is a 29-page booklet. It features numerous color and black and white pictures from the film. It also includes several articles including Introduction for Dario Argento Films by Scott Michael Bosco, A History of Argento Films by Travis Crawford, and a Jessica Harper interview by Scott Michael Bosco. This is very informative, and everyone should read it. The interview with Harper is entertaining, but I found the History of Argento's Films by Crawford to be the highlight of this extra. It's very well put together, and thanks should be given to Anchor Bay for including this. Also included in this were 10 lobby cards. They include stills of the film and alternate poster artwork. I think it's a very nice collectible that adds to this impressive collection. On top of that, it also comes with a third disc that is the original soundtrack to the film. There are 11 tracks. The total running time is pretty close to 55 minutes. I haven't timed it completely out, but it's something that's really great to have It's such a great soundtrack. There's also a poster and still gallery. This includes 99 color and black and white stills, print ads, press books, soundtrack covers, video covers, and posters in different languages. There are talent bios. That this includes biographies and filmographies for Argento, Nicoletti, and Jessica Harper. This disc comes with a THX optimizer so that you can get the best picture and sound for your system. The audio setup is a Dolby Digital DTS-ES-THE English 6.1 DTS-ES. Playback requires a DTS decoder. You have Dolby Digital Surround EX 5.1, English Dolby Surround 2.0, Italian Dolby Surround 2.0, and French Dolby Surround 2.0. This movie deserves every bit of the treatment that it got. It sounds great, and you can't miss anything no matter how you listen to it. The only thing that's missing is a commentary soundtrack. Now there are Easter eggs. There's an outtake. If you select the special features option in the main menu, press right to highlight a peacock feather, and press enter to view an outtake. You know, really great film. The suspense, gore, witchcraft, beautiful Italian women, mood, lighting, and atmosphere. I truly believe this is one of the greatest horror films ever made. Anchor Bay went way above and beyond the Call of Duty for this set to make sure, you know, it makes you wonder why more companies don't do releases like this. The coolest addition to this, as I said, is the Goblin soundtrack. And this was just everything that you could ask for in a DVD release when DVD was king. If you pick this up, you're going to have to do it on eBay. It's not available in stores. It's out of print. The year of the DVD release was 2001. The aspect ratio was a 2:3:5:1. So I would recommend that you try and get a hold of it if you can. I give the movie rating a 5 out of 5. I give the DVD rating a 10 out of 10. Again, this is the pinnacle type of release that you want in your collection. You would be very hard pressed, short of the new 4K releases, to find anything even remotely on this level. So make sure to head on over to anywhere you get your collectible DVDs and pick up your copy of Anchor Bay's 3-disc release of Dario Argento's Susperia. Coming up in just a few moments, we're going to go into our feature interview with podcasters Dave Maresca and Jennifer Cifuentes. Also with that, we will have film director Shawn Burkett and writer Argalin Darkscares of Morbidly Beautiful. But before that, we're going to go into our next Metal Massacre Spotlight. I think the band and the song are highly appropriate. The name of the band is Cannabis Corpse, the CD is Tube of the Resonated, and the song is Mummified in Bong Water.
Contaminating us and burning all these notes, all these projections through their uniform. In their bodies pop about the hurting, gruesome content on dolphins and storms. Shadows of the mutants, consciousness slithering and form, fluids used to transform. Portrayed killers on their chain, corpses and fearsome hits. Water smells forward, millions of tons, all above the sky. People ready for their lives, shouting fear. Second stage, unable to read. All water bearing this. Water smells forward, just the tons, all from the sky. Dead bodies floating up and on. As mythics of the mind, even then not alive. Human life to decline. It puts on what's inside. Mummified in cold water.
And welcome back. You just heard the band Cannabis Corpse. The CD was Tube of the Resonated, and the song was Mummified in Bong Water. Cannabis Corpse is a marijuana-themed death metal band that formed in Richmond, Virginia in 2006 under the Force Field label. Since then, Cannabis Corpse has released 5 LPs and 1 EP. The band features members of Municipal Waste, Guar, and Antietam 1862. Their name originates from a parody of the name for veteran death metal band Cannibal Corpse. While the Cannibal Corpse songs are fully original, Cannabis Corpse songs are fully original, their album and song titles are parodies of many other death metal bands' albums and song titles. For example, Tube of the Resonated versus Cannibal Corpse's Tomb of the Mutilated. Make sure to head on over to their Facebook page and to their official website to find out when this band is touring, how to get their merchandise, and their CDs. But now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for our feature interview.
And you will face the sea of darkness, and all therein that may be explored.
And welcome to our feature interview. This evening I have 4 guests, which is a little bit more than normal, but figuring what the topic is, I figured the more minds I could get together on this and pick opinions, the better it would be. So let me start off by introducing everyone that's here. First off, once again, we have Dave Maresca, a fellow podcaster that's part of the Hollow9ine Network. How's it going tonight, Dave?
Good, man. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Good, good. Well, it's always a pleasure having you on. You always bring fresh perspectives to what we're discussing, and I think tonight will be no different. In that same...
It's good to have fresh stuff for tonight. Tonight's good to have some fresh stuff.
Indeed. Now, we also have director Shawn Burkett. Everyone should remember Shawn, the director of one of my favorite films so far, Don't Fuck in the Woods. Shawn, welcome back to the show.
Hello. Great to be back.
For the first time this evening, we're having Jennifer Cifuentes join us. She is another podcaster who has just started another podcast. I believe it's on the Hollow9ine Network, and that's #Dead. Everyone say hello to Jennifer.
Hello, guys. Yes, you can find me over at hollow9.com. That's the word hollow, the number 9, INE.com. And you can hear me as Jennifer9 over there on a variety of podcasts. But my newest one is #Dead, and we talk all zombies all the time on that one. Brand new.
I'll have to come over and be on that one sooner or later.
Absolutely.
And of course, rounding it out, we have a fellow morbidly beautiful writer, Argalin Darkscares. Argalin, what's going on?
Hello there. Thanks for including me again.
Of course, of course. Well, you know, we're going to talk about a topic tonight that, you know, I kind of feel like it's a laughed at segment of our genre. And what we're going to be talking about tonight is how we feel about how marijuana is portrayed in horror films and how the characters that partake in it are portrayed in these films. And, you know, I, for one, you know, I've been on the record as saying it, and almost anyone who knows me knows, I am definitely a proponent of legalized marijuana, both for medical use and for personal use. I feel like in the light of how society is today with the opioid addictions and everything else that's going on, I personally have found marijuana to be a much more effective tool as opposed to some of the other vices that are out there in the world. And we'll talk about some of those things. But, you know, as the coughing starts in the background there. You know, Dave, let me ask you first, you know, as a fellow podcaster, as someone who is doing stuff with the voice acting and everything that you're doing now, you know, what are your perceptions on how marijuana is portrayed in horror films?
You know, it's funny that you put a highlight real quick on the fact that we all work with our voices, and there are a lot of people that, in addition to some of the other details that they'll use or latch onto when they take sort of a negative stance on, you know, marijuana use in general, is like, oh, it'll damage your voice. And I was like, well, maybe I haven't thank for this deep-ass voice sometimes. But that's the whole other podcast, I guess, on how vocal mechanics evolve. But I think, you know, bad about with the horror genre is that I feel like its tropes get an unfair intensity with the microscopes they get put under sometimes. And, you know, it's supposed to be probably one of the more fun genres, and so, you know, there's always a danger of getting tropey if you do things too much. And I think, you know, you've got some of the tropes like the dumb blonde bimbo who'll just run into the serial killer's arms and just like get slashed up. And I think sometimes not sometimes, most of the time they throw the sort of marijuana users right in that milieu. You know what I mean? This is the Bill and Ted of the horror genre.
Sure.
So if you need a quick kill, oh yeah, this guy's not even gonna hear the guy coming because this weed is so good, man. My ears just gonna work.
You know, it's interesting. You know, as someone who works in the genre, you know, Shawn is a filmmaker. You know, I do effects. I know Jennifer and her family is involved quite heavily. It seems like in the acting, and they may do a little bit more, and we'll find out about that. But looking at it from that perspective, you know, Jennifer, having family that also works in the industry, younger people, you know, how do you feel the portrayal of marijuana is shown in genre films?
I feel like there's this war on immoral behavior, what is dubbed as immoral behavior kind of in horror films sometimes, where, you know, you can't have sex or you're a goner, you're going to die. You have to be, you know, the virgin who, you know, Never gave it up if you want to survive. It's kind of like when Scream did the rules. And I also feel unfairly that the stoner, you're doing something stupid, you should have just said no, and you're surely going to die. And I remember way back, and I believe it was like 1982, I'm going to show my age here, and I was a kid, and I wanted to see E.T. with my family, but it was a double feature, and I had to sit through Halloween 3, I do believe. No, Friday the 13th 3. Sorry about that. And it was in 3D. And it's the first 3D movie I ever saw. And they're in the back of the van, and they're passing a joint around. And everyone in the audience reaches for that 3D joint. And I was immediately thinking, I'm like, I wonder if they're all going to die. Now, what would make me think that?
Right.
But yeah, I really remember that. But I also seem to remember, early on, I was watching Scooby-Doo like it was my damn job as a kid growing up, and I always suspected that Shaggy was a stoner. Yet, he seemed to be the one who knew what was going on, and if anyone was going to survive, it was surely going to be Shaggy and Scooby, because they knew when to get the fuck out. So, I think it's kind of silly that you have the stoners be the ones that always get killed, because in my experience, if you smoke marijuana and you're a creative in any kind of profession, it has been attributed to being more creative and coming up with really good ideas. And I kind of think that if I were in a horror movie and I'm, lighting up with one of my buds or something, I think we have a pretty good chance of surviving, because we're probably in the corner, looking at the monster, laughing at his weird ass hair, and we've already made a plan to make a TV show out of him after we kick his ass. So that's kind of how I feel about it. And I do feel like, it's one of those things where and I even found a chart online where it's like how many deaths stoners have suffered at the hands of horror movies, and it seemed like a bunch were killed in the 80s, and then hardly any in the 90s, and then again in the 2000s they kind of brought it all back. And I wonder why it seems like, the 80s was a really big time to kill stoners, and then again in the 2000s, and then you don't see it so much anymore. And it almost seems like it trends at certain times, and I wonder if even now, as California and Colorado have legal recreational weed, and it's legal for medicinal use, all over the place. And as even Georgia here in Atlanta, they're talking about making it legal for medicinal use and possibly even recreational use. Don't know if it'll happen, but it seems like weed is something more acceptable, because with the opioid addiction and the crisis going on in our country, you don't hear about weed addicts, but you hear a lot about alcoholics, you hear a lot about opioid addicts and ruining their lives, and I can't really say I've ever heard of anyone ruining their lives smoking weed. But that's my two cents on it. So.
You hear potheads, and that just doesn't sound as dangerous or yucky as drug addict or junkie. Like pothead's just like, hey man, I'm a pothead. What's going on? And you're like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, you're probably going to grab some snacks and, chill out.
Right. No, and see, now this is why I had Shawn come on. Now, Shawn, in your film, Don't Fuck in the Woods, one of the main characters would be what some people consider to be the stereotype for the everyday stoner. Now, talk about for you, from an entertainment standpoint as a director, talk about the nuances of his, if it was even acting, we can call it like that, and what are your thoughts on how it's portrayed in the industry?
I've noted several things. I just mainly, I reference, as far as in horror movies, the stoners to normally be the fun people. They're kind of the comedy in kind of the newer films within the last decade. But honestly, I think they're just another body count at the same time. It's a numbers game, to be honest, and honestly, a lot of people nowadays smoke.
Very true.
It's not hard to come by any means anymore.
No. I'll keep my mouth shut.
Our Are supposed to be high right now, by the way. I didn't know.
Well,
that's right.
I mean, there's no rule against it.
I was just going to say, how much of a filter do you want?
How much? Your filter depends on you.
Well, maybe that's okay.
But, you know, Argalin, I mean, that does bring up an interesting point. Now, from a journalistic standpoint, for the things that we do, that we write about on Morbidly Beautiful, sometimes we see the tropes more than the average fan or the average person, because we imbibe so much content from, movies. What is your thoughts as you see it in the genre? How do you feel like it's still treated that cartoony way, from 70s and 80s, or is it?
Absolutely. There's exceptions that are trickling in. I forget his name. The character in Cabin in the Woods. I don't know if anybody's seen that.
Yes.
Spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1. He survives. The dumb stoner who is still kind of the character he's treated as kind of like the fun guy, the naive guy, the clueless guy who can't get laid, whatever. But he's like all those conspiracy theories he spouts out. He's checking out everything in the cabin to make sure it's safe or whatever. I mean, that was the smart thing to do in that particular movie. And he survived. I don't think that was the reason why he survived, but and he wasn't the only one that survived either. So that was an interesting way to handle stoner character. Yeah, it's a typical stereotype. It's almost as if it's like I called him. In a paper I wrote about women in horror movies, I referred to men as murder meat because in a lot of ways, in like the simple old school slasher movies anyway, men just kind of want to party and meet with the girls and hook up with the girls, and that usually dumbs them down tremendously and gets them killed quickly. So everybody screams and yells that women are victims in horror movies, and it's always them, and it's a majority, yes, but guys, whether they're stoners, partiers, they're cut down real fast.
Yeah, I mean that's very true.
I'm sort of trailing off into another stratosphere here. I don't want to.
Well, what are you smoking, bro?
Well, that's yeah.
No answer too. Holy shit, you got.
When it doesn't have a name, it's really good.
I am exactly. It's a stereotype. I mean, I think there are more insulting things in horror movies than the comedic stoner. And although it might be a little bit pigeonholing to sort of give everybody the idea that stoners are just the lazy beer guys, who smoke pot and I don't know, whatever the fuck people say they do. But I mean, we can handle it. I don't know, whoever the stoners can handle it. If you want to make us look stupid, if you want to make us look naive, clumsy, if you want to make us murder meat, fine. I mean, I can handle it.
Right.
Maybe you should maybe people should focus on other aspects of the unfair attitude. I don't know, as far as everybody's on the woman thing now, pretty much. So, there's a lot of other things in horror movies that.
Oh no, and I'm not.
Or talk about.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not hurt about our portrayal. I just find it to be a curiosity, because Jennifer had mentioned an article, and I'm thinking we're talking about the same one here. I found it on Leafly, and it was and it talks about how many stoners have died in horror movies, and it's written by Rebecca Kelly, and it's actually a pretty intelligent little article, and she admits that she
infographics too,
and she readily admits that she doesn't have the library between all of us when it comes to horror films. So and this was like back in, I want to say 2013 when this was written. So she had mentioned that she had found 25 examples of where enjoying a joint, toke, or a bong rip resulted in an abruptly shortened lifespan. And what she came up with in her research was 54 dead stoners, 29 male, 25 female. The movies in particular that she mentions are starting from 1978 through 2012 would be Halloween, Prom Night, Graduation Day, Friday the 13th Part 3, Slumber Party Massacre, Day of the Dead, I mean most of the Friday the 13th, Cabin Fever, Leprechaun, Back to the Hood, all the way up to VHS. And she also breaks down like the methods that they're killed. Like the most is 17 by stabbing, 4 burned, things like that, 5 impaled. And I just find it interesting because you do kind of think about what Jennifer said. Usually they're the most laid back people. They're not causing any trouble, and like in my own life, I know plenty of people who smoke, and I don't have what I would consider to be the bungling idiot stoner sitting on the couch friend. I don't have one of those.
Well, one of the stereotypes, one of the things that slasher movies do, I want to say slasher movies because every example I think of is a slasher movie. What they do is they take the weakness of each character, the dumb blonde, the brainy one, the stoner, and they take the one glaring thing about them that encompasses their personality more than anything, or is their biggest weakness, sex, weed, he's a nerd, he can't get laid, he's a geek, that kind of thing. And I think that's where a lot of those stereotypes come from. Like they look for people, types of people, and just sort of sprinkle them in. At least that's what they used to do, I think. It was it's as if like it's lazy to sort of, because who's like, even like mainstream people who don't watch many horror movies joke around, oh well, he's the black one, he's gonna die first, oh well, he's the stoner, he's gonna die next, oh well. And they're fucking right sometimes, and that pisses me off. Because I know a lot of our shit is predictable, but we love it anyway, and that's our thing. So, like, when I don't know, outsiders, make observations, and especially when they're right on the money, pisses me off.
How dare you fucking your eyes, you bitches! I can't fucking deal with it.
Oh yeah. I'm so protective of my horror shit.
I think though, every once in a while I want to watch something that's so super tropey and just like lets me sit back and laugh at it. I mean, I remember being in college, smoking, and watching the scenes where like they would make fun of the stoners and we're just like, oh, what the fuck? That's so bullshit, and then maybe that would spark a whole side conversation, and then you miss the next half hour of the movie, and maybe in that half hour, like you learn how to freestyle, or you guys learn how to put together furniture. Like there's some shit that would have gone down because. One of the things that it will do to you sometimes is make you just suddenly get invested in something else that you weren't invested in 5 minutes.
Well, yeah, sometimes it can make you super hyper-productive if you get shit done.
Yeah, but I mean, it's interesting that in that way, and I feel like that was probably a very exaggerated example I gave, but, this thing that's supposed to be part of this greater body of work that's keeping your attention and entertaining you just might be the thing that jumpstarts you off onto some side project and actually does the exact opposite of what it was intended to do. And, that's just the fucking dice roll you take, I think. And ultimately, I think I love conversations like this, and I do really quickly, which I should have done at the beginning, say that, of course, anything I say is just my opinion, doesn't represent the whole Hollow9ine Network or any of the associates or affiliates or sponsors or partners that are behind us or with us, and I'm sure Jennifer and I agrees. But, it's, now that I said that, I don't even really remember what I was going to say, but it's just one of those things where, you can't really please everybody, and it's going to be the kind of thing that no matter how this is ever treated, if everybody starts doing it the same way, we're going to rail against that for being an oversaturation or a trend. And I think it's just that there are times that some people overly exaggerate things, and we don't even know they're coming, but when we see them, we'll cry foul. And, you know, luckily the stoners are the ones who are going to cry foul and sit there with their phone and just type some shit out on their Facebook. They're probably not going to even not buy the movie. They're probably going to keep the fucking Blu-ray. They're probably going to even make friends watch it just to show them the part that they thought was fucked up. You know, there's a little bit of, it could work both ways for you. So, I don't know. I mean, maybe everybody just needs to chill out.
Now, Shawn, for you, again, I'll bring up Don't Fuck in the Woods, and you have a character, as I mentioned before, who is a stoner, and you played many of those tropes. And one of the things that I've noticed is, especially watching films, you can kind of tell if the actor who is doing the role has ever really been stoned or know what he's doing. You know, for the character in your film, you know, kind of talk about how you went over with the actor, how you wanted him to be. Was it just naturally him? You know, things along those lines.
What's funny is he had never smoked before, and then one night we just got baked. that's pretty much the end of it. Like, we had.
Sometimes you gotta do research.
Right. Yeah. Like, okay. Like, he would be holding it for like 3 minutes, and we're like, dude, no. You take a puff. You take a puff, then you pat clockwise. Like, we've got 5 people here.
There's an etiquette involved.
Exactly. And dude, this is also taking way too fucking long. Look at them all staring at you. That's gonna get worse. Let's get this show moving. Right. And it being his first time that he had smoked, I mean, it didn't take nothing but like 2 times around the circle, and he was pretty much gone. But it was, but since then he has become a avid smoker, and cool. He's great at what he does, I guess.
Well, and that's, you know, that was the thing with his performance. You know, that was one of the few times when I couldn't really tell if he was acting or if he was really stoned, because his mannerisms were pretty spot on for what they needed to be.
Yeah, no, he was definitely stoned for most of it, because I didn't write a lot of those lines. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, he did really great.
Now when I see the movie, I'm gonna know that. I'm gonna know, like, he's really stoned and he's just sort of cutting loose. That's neat.
But the thing is it, and that's the thing with that film, Argalin, is like it's like I said, when you watch a movie and, you know, you have someone who's trying to play at a pothead and trying to do, you know, there are certain body movements, there are certain ways that we look at one another, things like that you can't fake. You either know it or you don't. And I'm telling you, the guy in this film, it's refreshing because it feels real, and obviously it was real, but you know, it's just such an enjoyable performance to see someone get it right. Like I said, it's not like I'm offended by this. I'm more amused by the topic, you know. I mean, to be honest with you, a film that I would like to discuss for a minute that I thought was a fairly good representation of how a stoner may act in a horror situation was Idle Hands.
Oh, yeah. That's one of my favorites.
Blast from the past, wow.
Yeah.
Seriously, I wasn't expecting that, and I feel dumb now for not expecting it. Like, dumb. That was awesome.
I was waiting to mention it, but I'm glad you did.
Dude, you told me to smoke nutmeg? Who does that? What was that?
But I mean, I think that movie is a good dichotomy. I mean, it shows the, you know, for the lack of a better term, the idiot stoner in Seth Green, and the character of Anton. You know, yes, he's a stoner, but at the same time, you know, he's a pretty inventive kid on the fly. You know, and I've always, I've always said that's. Yeah, I mean, to me, that's what I would love to see. I'm going to go ahead. I've had this film idea for 10 years. I'm just going to say it because it doesn't look like I'll be able to make it anytime soon. But I've always said I wanted to do a pot-themed zombie film and play the zombie stuff very seriously and have a group of stoner characters caught in the zombie apocalypse and portray them as like the intelligent ones. Like, what if it was a group? What if it was a group of college? Oh my God, I don't know why I can't think of the word. Like mechanical engineers.
There you go.
Think about the kind of things they could whip together to try and survive the zombie apocalypse.
From like MIT or something.
You know, I mean, kind of like Harold and Kumar, but without the humor. Play up the intelligent side of it instead of the idiot side of it.
Then you have to have things that could work in a slightly humorous way. Like, they go to the spot where they're growing the shit, and now that's overrun with zombies. But like, it's fenced off, so if he could get to it, he could still harvest. But he has to somehow get over a horde of zombies that are just like surrounding the pen.
Well, I'll go ahead and give you.
That is like wide open for fun.
I'll give you one of the kill ideas right here because it's never been done. So if you see it in a movie, you go, okay, we know where they stole that idea from. My idea was, what if you got trapped in a bar? You have no guns or anything heavy like that. You look around. What could you do? You could build a variation of an air compressor gun and shoot beer cans at the zombies. Put a beer can through a zombie head.
That would work.
But that's that weird. See that? But that's like the kind of weird shit I'll think about while I'm at the bar. Like if this was to go down, this is what I'm doing. Exactly. There's a preparedness to it.
I'm always thinking, I'm pushing you out of the way, I'm pushing you out of the way, and I'm running up those stairs. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. The zombies all winter over there, get the fuck out of my way. I don't care if I'm stoned or not, you're moving, I'm sorry.
I have a movie that I would like to see made, and it came to me. And so what if you've got this wide-sweeping, legalization of marijuana in every state for recreation use, and you've got the old law dog, he's from the deep south, and he just knows that, smoking marijuana is bad, and it's going to lead to the end of all of society and humanity, and he just knows it, and there's nothing he can do because, they went and legalized everything, and, it's his last day on the job, and he's about to retire, but then there's this batch of weed that gets put out, and maybe they even call it zombie. And it turns people into zombies. And so he's like, oh no, my moment to shine. It's time to kick ass. I knew this was going to happen.
But what's funny about that, and I think it's something it's hard to address, so I don't even know. I think maybe this is the right kind of panel to ask a question like this. There's a certain amount of, I think all of us would probably agree that you hear about what the experience of using marijuana is going to be like before you do it, and then when you do it, you're like, okay, so some of you motherfuckers lied, especially if you grew up in a house where it was like they watched Reefer Madness all the time, and you're just like, that is just fucking dumb. That is like just so not how it is, but there is a strongly voiced, I don't know if I want to say majority or percentages, I definitely haven't done any research, so I don't want people to think I'm just talking out my ass, but there is a very strong voice right now that is still holding fast to the old mythos surrounding why it's demonized, and I think in regards to the fact that we're creating or talking about creating entertainment that's supposed to be, consumable by all to a degree, and it's up to them to choose whether or not they want to watch it. At the same time, you're trying to kind of get the most return on investment you can for this project. So how much of the way you treat it has to be played to sort of the fake perceptions that are out there that are being held onto by certain people, and then the other people who have experience with it and who actually know what it's really like, and then how do you balance those two? And in speaking of that, you kind of do have to look at the idea that a majority percentage in the last Pew Research polls, 64%, that's a number I do know, have said that they would be in favor of legalizing it both for medical and recreational, because about the same percentage are using it regardless of the fact of its legality or illegality where they are now.
That's a great question. Let's go around the table. Shawn, let's start with you on that.
Yeah. I think we're really practicing what we're preaching here.
How so?
Well, I don't know. I'm not really with it completely.
And everyone's like, what?
Let me get that out there. Yeah.
Well, you want the question again? You want me to repeat it, or?
To me?
In general, I don't know. I feel like we got
Oh,
some
okay.
data going on.
Well, yeah. Sure. My observation... All right, go on.
No, go. Hey, dude, if you got observations, good. Oh.
Well, with this zombie pop movie we're making now, we have to go to marketing. Marketing is what would make it would make or break it. Because there's two kinds of people, so it's going to have either one kind of or that there's the people who think pot smokers are all, terrible, like you described. There's that part of the population, and the only joke, the only humor, the only pot humor they know is like what's the word I'm looking for? Slapstick humor, falling down, fucking up, and and then there's the other kind of pot humor that's for people who've done it, do it, understand it, can see situations and things and think like, oh yeah, that happened to me once too, just like that, all that kind of stuff. So you have to kind of know which of those two audiences you want to play up to, and depending on how much money you want to make, I mean that should be included in your decision too. I don't know. See this? I have no brakes on my brain. They just go.
Hey, it worked.
All right, Jennifer?
I gotta say that I don't know what people are really talking about when they stop the evils of marijuana use. I really don't. You see people who have cancer who are in incredible pain, and they're killing the rest of their body that the radiation isn't killing by taking these, big pharma drugs. And then they experiment, and they're like, okay, well, I'm going to try anything. And they smoke pot, and, they get that relief that they're looking for. So I think it's incredibly helpful medicinally. And I think recreationally, as long as, it's not kids doing it or something like that, I think it's fine. I mean, they let people, take or drink alcohol at age 21 and in some states 18. And, I think alcohol does a lot more damage than pot. And so I think I'm completely good with it being legal recreationally as well. So, I mean,
plus, people who are for legalization, we don't want, we're not going to be riding around on fire trucks throwing bags of weed, in everybody's lawn. I mean,
If so, I want to move to that neighborhood.
It becomes legal and they automatically send a bomb to your house. That's not going to hurt people.
I mean, it should be policed like alcohol is, maybe even a little more severely, simply because in the beginning, everybody's going to want it. Everybody's going to want to try it. It's just going to be, there's going to be a huge rush on it. I don't know. But,
it's funny that you even bring up alcohol. I mean, society already has a working model for how a substance can be controlled and yet allowed to be enjoyed recreationally by the public at large. And when you're talking about a subject that more than half the country feels so fucking strongly about, I don't understand why we can't just stop the conversation and say, all right, obviously we're working off old data. When it becomes a question of percentages, when we're down to 1 or 2 here in certain big events that have been happening politically without getting into the weeds, and then you think, here's something where it's a clearly large majority, we're talking 14% over the line. That shouldn't be a hard conversation to have. And I think the people who are supposedly being accused of being the zombified idiots for using it are the ones pointing that fucking fact out.
Well, for me, I mean, in my youth, yes, I was much more of what would be considered a recreational user. That comes with youth and stupidity. And there was a point in time where I didn't do it anymore. And, later on in life, I was diagnosed with PTSD, and they tried to put me on all different kinds of pharmaceutical stuff that just, it didn't work. And I have found now that, I'm not an everyday smoker. It's, I just don't need it every day. But when I have severe anxiety or the onset of stuff like that, I find it to be very useful, It's better to me than sitting back and taking a drink or doing other recreational things that are definitely more detrimental to your health. I feel the same way you do about it. You look at European countries that have a lower drinking age, and studies over there show that they have less problems with quote-unquote underage drinking in those countries because it's no longer such a social taboo. It's not the cool thing to do. And you're right. And I think people have this idea that if it was legalized or shown in a better light than what it was, that everyone's going to be doing it. And in the beginning, yes, you may have people try it who have never done it, but at the end of the day, I believe it was Dave that said it, the only people that are going to be doing it are the people that are already doing it, whether it's legal in their area or not. It's not like all of a sudden if you legalized it, I'm going to go out on the front lawn, wait for a cop car to drive by, flag him down, and ask him for a light.
Yeah, I mean, for a country that likes to be known as the country that's got the freest life in the world, it seems like there's a whole lot of people here who are more hot and bothered about what people who aren't them are doing, and doing things that aren't going to be forcibly involving them. I mean, to me, this is no different than when you argue about same-sex marriage or anything that people can find controversy about. Like, you allow gay people to get married, that doesn't mean you suddenly have people kicking in your door saying you two have to gay. It's like, it makes no sense for you to have such a strong opinion about it. I'm not trying to belittle the fact that you do. You're totally entitled to it if you do. But I feel like this is a much easier thing to have a less harsh opinion about. Especially because just because it's legal, the same thing with alcohol. You don't have to drink. You can drive right past the liquor store and not stop in. And I think it makes no sense to me. Like, there has to be some greater scheme here to why it's such a staunch rebellion.
I've already said that I'm on the record as saying, and you all can quote me on this, because everyone's going to wonder, where does the money go that the government takes? I have the easiest solution that should shut everybody up, and I can't think of a reason why this is a bad idea. If it's legalized recreationally, medicinally, and it's taxed by the government, I'm 100% for that. What do you do with that money? I'll tell you what you do. You take that money, and everybody wants this universal free healthcare system. That's how you fund it. Here's and here's the thing. And here's the thing. That would leave arguments like that out of government. It does not become a Democrat thing. It does not become a Republican thing. The money from that funds the healthcare system. That's all that money's for. If that's what the people really want, they want a goal to achieve, that's one way to achieve it.
Yeah, I mean, pot now is safer to ingest than ever before because we have vaping, we have edibles, we have, all kinds of things that doesn't involve you actually filling your lungs with smoke. So for all the people who are like, it'll cause emphysema and, you get the black lung from doing the reefer or, whatever, don't even have that option. Black lung.
The green lung from doing the reefers.
The green lung, yeah. So, I mean, you have an option nowadays that you can just take that out of the equation for anyone who is like, well, but the smoke. Okay, well, take the smoke out. You've got vaping, you've got edibles, you've got pot pills even, if you still want to pop a pill every day. And I just, that has been one of the things, like, well, you shouldn't be smoking. Well, okay, yeah, you shouldn't be, but people smoke cigarettes, and they're perfectly legal, so.
And how long have we been hearing all the mass media propaganda against cigarettes and all the attitude towards cigarette smoking to the point where they couldn't advertise it anymore. They had to limit how much it was seen in movies and TV shows, and it wasn't even really supposed to be able to be seen until after certain hours. It's like you'll take these kind of artificial surface kind of superficial steps to pretend you're actually trying to maintain this level of treating it as something important. The fucking industry is still there. I mean, it's the same. I mean, really, when you want to talk about people putting things up as like a vice that everyone should feel one way about, but then you look at the fact that there's an industry behind it that is still being propped up by profit. The same thing with porn. Anyone who wants to talk about how this horrible thing? Yeah, well, it's making billions of fucking dollars a year. Yeah. There's got to be more than 5 people in that pool. So, you know what I mean? Like, you can't be standing there acting like you're talking about it, but you know exactly what ass eating is, all right? Like, go the fuck home. Stop trying to control everyone's fucking life.
Now, one of the things I wanted to bring up, you know, is if you really look at when all of this propaganda started, it started with a film that can be argued is a horror film. And the film, of course, I'm talking about is Reefer Madness. Now, a lot of people will go, how can you consider Reefer Madness a horror film? If you look at what the movie does to portray its actors who smoke, it's almost like a lycanthropic curse, how they change. It's like Jekyll and Hyde. And, Shawn, are you still with us?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, if you look at Reefer Madness and you look at it from the aspect of a horror film, and we're talking about what, the mid to late 1920s, talk about how effective that movie was at horrifying its audiences.
I mean, it was definitely built more of a PSA for sure, and it had that in there. It was supposed to scare kids. It was basically the urban legend. Like, if you smoke pot, this is what's going to happen to you. You're going to be a bad person. You could kill people. And then, like, you know, about 40 years later, they got down to it. Like, hey, we found this in your drawer. Who taught you how to do this stuff? You, all right? I learned it from watching you. I'm not gonna lie. The first time I saw that movie, I was high as shit.
Weren't we all? Weren't we all?
I think probably, yeah.
I've actually never seen it.
Really?
I know what it is. I've seen clips of it and everything, but I've never seen it.
It's very interesting. Like I said, you know, when you think about it from a horror perspective, you know, that was the first time, you know, and at least as far as I can remember, watching any horror movie that incorporated pot or marijuana in it. You know, that was the only one that, if you think about it, was truly scary, was a horrific depiction, no matter how much of a propaganda film it was. You know, Jennifer, you know, we look at films like that and how much they influenced pop culture and how it was portrayed in films. You know, can you kind of speak to how you feel it was such a pivotal film in American history?
Well, I mean, number one, my zombie weed movie that I'm shopping here, I would definitely make it a reboot horror style of Reefer Madness.
Oh, that'd be a great idea.
I mean, right? So yeah. I'd watch it. But yeah, I mean,
that's copyrighted to Hollow9ine Network, guys. It's under our production umbrella.
Everybody wants to do it. But yeah, I watched Reefer Madness when I was in art school, and I had this film as art class in college. And oh man, it was these old movies, and they would put disturbing soundtracks through them. It was like Nosferatu and The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. And so my friends and I, being, you know, art students, we decided, you know, this class would be so much better to, like, take, and it'd be, like, a lot more chill in our life if we would just get a high before class, and we would go and watch these fucked up movies. And so we ended up going, I mean, like, I can't even remember what the movie was. Maybe it's like The Andalusian Dog or something like that. If you've seen it, you know you've seen it. It's slicing eyeballs. I mean, it's yeah. And, I mean, really, we were looking just to enjoy this, you know, art and film history class. And we ended up, you know, the internet was around back then. I'm not that old. So we ended up coming home from class, and we're like, man, we got to find some more fucked up shit to watch. And I'm like, you know what I've always heard about? I've heard about Reefer Madness. And somehow we found a copy online, and we watched it after an art and film history class, and we're just all like dying. We're like, oh my god, this is so ridiculous. And we're like, but imagine how terrified people back then were to see this. And you're thinking about, you know, it's Prohibition era where, you know, oh god, alcohol is so bad, and you know, it led to, you know, people drinking paint thinner and stuff like that, just crazy stuff, and you know, they have speakeasies and everything. So you kind of wrap your head around, the time where everyone was like, oh my God, you can't do that. We have to scare the living shit out of people so they'll never do this. And there had to be some kind of reason why. And I can't imagine why, but we just had a blast watching that film. And, it was more like, I would say it's probably the first horror film that had pot in it and had, pot-related deaths.
Now, Dave, to you, if you look at the scope and the magnitude that this film left on audiences, could you equate this something to the level of Wells' War of the Worlds?
In the fact that, and you would have to also get thrown up there with the way that Spielberg with Jaws got people to not go in the fucking water at the beach in one of the hottest summers in history. It's incredible how these phenomenon show the power of movies and TV and just the idea of stories and how, we all, I would imagine we all remember at least the one time in our lives as kids where our parents try to explain to us the difference between make-believe and reality. And we're all supposed to walk into these things knowing these are make-believe, this is being shown to us for our entertainment, and then sometimes these are being shown to you and they're true, so you should listen to them. And I almost would equate that to be something more responsible for the fact that so much of our actual social behaviors and fashion trends are more often following things that we see in movies and TV than they're just following our own random thoughts on what we should wear. You know what I mean? You need some kind of baseline for what's considered cool or trendy. And it's interesting how some things like that we're okay with, but then we'll also use the same tool to then demonize certain things that, maybe some of us who've actually tried it, know is not as demonic as they're making it seem. And, I think there was a story a friend of mine was telling me once about he and his brother were in their car driving, and they got to a stoplight and they're having this very heated argument about how you really can't consider all drugs the same. Like, there's that argument that, like, drugs are drugs and they're all bad, and they're going back and forth, and finally they kind of land on, like, well, weed's not as bad as everything else. And then they turn and look out their window, and of course next to them is the same lane, or then the lane next to them is a cop car, and the two cops are just staring at them, like, listening to the whole conversation. All four start laughing, light turns green, everybody goes home. But it was that sort of moment where they kind of all were like, yeah, you gotta do a point. You know what I mean? And it's sort of like when you boil it down to the people who actually are around it and know about it.
No, I mean, that's
not what they make it seem. And, we're very susceptible to what we think are supposed to be these socially accepted rules and protocols to follow. And it's very hard for people to question a mentality that's been operating that way for a long time.
for sure.
I agree, definitely.
You'll definitely...
Yeah,
you'll definitely have to check that movie out, Argalin. You should do a review on that. I'd be interested to see what your thoughts on that film were.
Reefer Madness?
Yes.
I'll look it up. I think it's public domain, so I can probably get it on YouTube.
I think it is.
Oh, yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah.
See, and I think I got it figured out. We've got the 5-person production crew here. Shawn, if it's public domain, I think we should do a modern day version of Reefer Madness.
I like that.
Except it won't be imaginary. Because we got to have Jennifer in, because she had the idea of it turning people. So we could combine this whole element and just remake Reefer Madness.
You have to have a scene. Oh, go ahead, sorry. I'm already contacting the dispensaries to try to get some funding.
That's actually...
Hell yeah, dude, hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's actually a brilliant idea.
A pretty good production budget, yeah. That's not a
You have to have a whole scene where everyone thinks the guy is turning, but he's really just so fucking frustrated that it's the zombie apocalypse, it's the last PS4, and he just got a fucking corrupt hard drive. And he's like throwing shit everywhere, foaming in his mouth. You just ruined it for everybody.
Now here's an interesting one, and I think, Shawn, since you're the current active director out of all of us, you would probably be able to answer this. In a lot of films, of course, because drugs are illegal, a lot of times substitutions are used. But now that pot has become legal in some places, whether medicinally, recreationally, or both, how does that change the dynamic on a film set? Like, if you wanted to film, hypothetically, if you wanted to film a scene with pot, you know, if your state it was legal, are you allowed to do that? How do things like that work?
That's a good question. I've never taken that into consideration.
They can do it in California now.
It's kind of one of those things that if the actor smokes and they want to smoke, go for it. We generally try not to be out in public areas all that much anyways, with, you know, the nudity and sex and drugs.
Just those things.
Right. Following their own advice from the title, they're not fucking in the woods.
That's true. I don't know if that would save anyone.
I was going to say hence the title.
Well, no, I mean, you know, like I said, I find all this to be, you know, fascinating, and how it's changed over the years. You know, it's funny though. You watch movies like Scarface, where, you know, the material is taken very seriously. And of course, you know, we're talking about like cocaine in that one. You know, most of your mafia films, your drug films are going to be about those kinds of drugs. But yet again, it just seems like those that use marijuana or films or about marijuana typically tend to be more of that humorous slant. So as we get ready to close out the show, I wanted to ask each one of you, with the exception of Idle Hands, which we all agree is a great stoner horror flick, you know, what is your favorite weed reference in a horror film and why? Shawn, let me start that with you.
Oh man, we're gonna start. I mean, you've got all the Evil Song movies. I'd have to say one of my most memorable ones is Freddy versus Jason, when Freddy turns into the caterpillar and brings a bomb in.
Yes.
Nice.
Argalin?
Good choice. Okay, I'm gonna go back to Cabin in the Woods. The stoner in Cabin in the Woods. I fucking love that guy. The coffee thermos bomb. That is my favorite all-time pot reference. So that's a good thing, because like only a pot enthusiast would understand that joke.
Right.
You know? So that's pretty neat. I love that joke. I love that movie, and I love that character. So that's my contribution.
How about you, Jennifer?
I'm going to go back to the first time I noticed Ponty in a horror film, and that was Friday the 13th 3. You cannot beat going to your first 3D movie and being handed a joint right out of the movie. You just can't beat it. So, yeah, it made you feel like you were one of the cast, you know, going along and to this horrifying adventure. But, yeah, maybe one time we'll have a 4D experience where, you know, you're actually allowed to type in plot so that you get the actual experience of at least inhaling secondhand smoke.
That's a funny thing. There's a comic book. It's a couple years old. It's a Harley Quinn comic book. It was like her 10th year anniversary in print or something. But it was a scratch and sniff comic, and the scent was marijuana.
Oh my God.
I don't know how
Harley Quinn comic book. That
yeah.
It was fucking fascinating at the same time.
It is. Now, I don't know if it really smells like marijuana. I know there was a lot of people complaining about it, but complaining as in this shouldn't be happening. But yeah, she should probably go. You could go on, like, I don't know, eBay or Amazon or something and look it up. It's like a single issue.
I'm gonna go find that one. Drew or Dave, how about for you?
I'm going to bring it back to the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise and go with, what is it, 6 Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare, where our good friend Spencer, the character Spencer, played by Breckenmeyer. Is it Breckenmeyer? Yeah, I think it was Breckenmeyer. That was one of the earliest times I think I was becoming socially aware of, you know, the Don't Do Drugs campaign, like finally starting to put some names to actual substances. There was a whole period of time I was watching movies and TV shows, and they would be mentioning different drugs, and my fucking idiot little brain had no idea what anything was. So when they said crack, they say coke, I was just like, it was all some random drug shit to me. So when Freddy's Dead came out, and there was this whole sequence where, you know, Johnny Depp comes back, and they're doing the This Is Your Brain on Drugs commercial, and they make it seem like because this is that it would actually be plausible that the world inside the TV would just start coming out at him, and Inagata Devita starts playing, and all of a sudden he's in a fucking video game. And, I mean, at that time I'm going, wow, is that what happens when you smoke? Imagine my fucking disappointment when I get to college and I'm like, that literally never fucking happened. You wind up in the TV show when you smoke. And I just think now it's one of the things that, especially as more and more people are smoking recreationally or medically or what have you, especially young people who are going to start growing up in a world where it'll be treated like alcohol is. They're going to, this is how some of these movies are going to not hold up. And I feel like, especially a movie from the late 80s, early 90s, when I put it in at first, the color and the quality and some of the things that they're doing, both with practical effects and special effects, it still doesn't feel that long ago to me, or like it should be considered old. And then something like that will come along and I go, oh yeah, wait a minute, yep, this is from fucking kindergarten. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that's a weird moment every time it happens.
Like for me, I mean, it's not so much an older film, but a film that I thought had a really great pot reference in it was Bride of Chucky, where they're in the back of the van and they think John Ritter's dead, and Chucky reaches for the bag of pot and he pops up out of the back and the nails go into his head and he goes, man, that looks so familiar, of course referencing Pinhead, and then later having the giant bag of pot on him. So I mean, it was, there are all kinds of, I mean, the Friday the 13th one definitely takes me back in part 3 because they thought the van was on fire and they're back there hitting that like 6-foot bong in the back of the van. That was funny. And of course, the Nightmare on Elm Street reference. I mean, we can't even forget, I mean, a lot of people, we know it's not the first, but probably the most influential slasher film. There's even that reference in Halloween where Jamie Lee Curtis hits the joint, and there's an example of someone who smoked pot and survived, though she was tormented by Michael for years afterwards.
Yeah, smoked pot, but not cock, dude. Big difference.
Well, yeah, I mean, you do kind of... That was good. You do have a point on that one.
That's the show. Slow burn. Call it slow burn.
So, as we go forward, do you guys think that we're going to see that MacGyver kind of intelligent stoner in a horror film? That's amazing. You could almost make the argument that you think Ash is stoned the whole time in the Evil Dead series, but
I think we'll see. We'll continue to see characters like that, but I think it's not going to be a trend. I think it's going to be a special occurrence depending on the movie. I think they're going to continue to be portrayed as stupid and silly.
I don't know if Harold and Kumar could get 3 or 4 movies.
It's possible that as time goes by, this whole problem is going to be phased out because, now I don't want to bring politics into it, but a lot of the lawmakers in Washington are, let's leave hot words out of this. Cranky old men. Let's call them cranky old men. And they're all from the old school. They all grew up in the 50s, 60s, whatever. They're all still sort of carrying those old school ethics and those old school ideas with them. And there's a lot of them, too, for some reason. As they kind of, not terrible, as they kind of die off and go away, and, a younger generation that grew up in the 70s and 80s and is at least, maybe if they're not smokers, at least they're aware that it's not the fucking life-destroying nightmare that the old-timers think it is. As that all sort of happens, as that all happens and they start to file in and get into positions of authority, maybe it'll start to fade away.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have some hope that maybe something like November, like if they're all voted out, maybe they don't have to die. They could, just chill and vote it out. We don't have to die, Daddy. We don't have to suddenly become the ones proving, we were like just proving Reefer Madness correct here all of a sudden. Like, oh yeah, a bunch of these constituencies that just wanted all these fucking old people to die. That's where they landed at the end of an hour.
Well, that's a pretty good euphemism for the word I'm thinking of, cranky old man. I don't know. I don't mean to make a blanket statement, but...
No, dude, I just saw a softball, so I swung at it. I'm sorry. That shit.
Well, I mean, it's a fascinating subject, and of course, it gets humorous because of the subject matter. We can't help that, but I think it's definitely a subgenre of, a sub-part of our genre that people sometimes overlook. There are quite a few films that incorporate pot, marijuana into them, and the various gruesome things that happen to you after you do it. So I'm always open to coming back to this subject. Again, I want to thank you guys for coming on. Before I let you all go, fill people in really quick on what's going on with you guys, projects we need to know about, podcasts, any articles, things like that. Argalin, let's start with you.
Okay, well, I have been drowning in Twin Peaks for about a week. I just got the new season yesterday, and I'm already in episode 7. No spoilers. And what I want to do is I want to write a big article about it for Morbidly Beautiful, but it's not going to be a review, technically. It's just going to be a reminiscence of the first season, because I was in high school when the first season came out. And then I'm going to sort of lead into a comparison/review of the new season, which is, I'm thrilled with it so far. People who bitch about it, I don't know where they're coming from.
Thank you. Fucking thank you. Although, no spoilers.
It looks just like it ended. I mean, it looks just like it ended, in that season, and there was a 25-year gap, and it looks like it started, like there was no gap whatsoever. It looks great.
Huh. I'll have to look into that myself. I remember the original series. I haven't checked out the second yet, so.
Oh, it's on Showtime, so the kills there's kills, and they're nasty.
Oh, good. Well, something to look forward to then. Now,
It's phenomenal.
Now, Shawn, we know with you, of course, you're still riding the success of Don't Fuck in the Woods. You're currently in pre-production on Don't Fuck in the Woods 2. Kind of tell people what else is going on, what other projects you got, anything people need to do to check you out.
Well, after tonight, I really want to write this underdog stoner movie to where the stoners win.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Like, I really should have thought about that for a minute. It's like, why's everybody got to pick on the stoners? Why do they always got to die?
Yeah. Don't save the world.
That would be awesome.
We were totally covering that at the Hollow9ine Network when he puts that together.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a thing.
Don't put it past Shawn. He'll do it. So any excitement, any news on Don't Fuck in the Woods 2 that you want to tell anybody?
We've cast a few people. We are getting ready to... Oh, wow. We're talking to a couple different effects artists. We're getting ready to make some animatronics that will be used in the film, and we've secured all our locations. So, other than a few cast members that we still need to cast, we're ready to go.
Excellent, excellent. Jennifer, for you.
Well, I am, as I said before, Jennifer 9 at the Hollow9ine Network, and that is the word hollow, the number 9ine.com. And we have, got a couple million podcasts over there. Right now, I am pushing hard. Tangent City is about to be released on hollow9ine.com. It's been playing on milehighradio.com for a little bit, but it is coming home, and we're going to release it so that you can download it on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, or you can head on over to tangentcity.hollow9ine.com and get them there as well. Make sure to check that out. I mean, Dave has been busting his ass to do it, and it's just great. So definitely check that out. But you can also hear me on 10 Minutes in Purgatory, which is a Winona Earth podcast. I am also on the Damned Flock, which is a podcast about Damnation, the USA Network original series. And then I'm also on It Worth Watching, which is a podcast that I host with Ashley Sanders, who does this Facebook Live show. And basically, we watched just about everything, and so we don't know if it's worth watching or not. So definitely check that one out as well. And then I'm on a handful of others here and there. Throne Games is one of my favorite ones to do with Dave and the crew, and just tons of podcasts. And I started a new one. It's called #Dead, and it's all zombies. And in the new year, I'll be launching This Podcast Sucks, which is all vampires. And I'll also be launching America's Psycho Sweethearts, where we talk all psychopaths. So it's going to be a big year.
Nice.
Wow.
Dave, can you top that?
Well, it's a good thing that I'm like the other half of Hollow9ine with her. She literally said like almost everything I would have pimped. I'm just like, yeah, we got a like 35 RSS feed. A really big one, you know, Tangent City is our original audio drama that has been airing over at milehighradio.com. That we kind of were hoping will be our sort of flagship show for the near and far future. But it's sort of like our, you know, TV show, our HBO primetime drama, basically with no picture. It's a TV show you can watch with your eyes closed, and we're hoping everybody enjoys it out there and comes over to hollow9ine.com to check it out. So other than that, you know, follow us at Hollow9Cast on Twitter. That's all of it's always the word Hollow, the number 9, INE. You can find us on Facebook, you can find us on Snapchat, wherever your favorite social media is sold, bought, and processed. That's where we will be. And we love coming to hang out over here at your shop, man, and thank you so much for having us. And we got to come over and hang out on any one of the myriad of shows Jennifer just listed. And
Absolutely.
Definitely.
We're
Well,
very big into the family vibe, so, you know, we have a partners page that we like to throw people's banners up on to help spread the love. So it's a good time to be getting down with the Hollow9ine.
well, like I said, I'll definitely make sure that I send Shawn's info to you guys and Argalin stuff to you guys and vice versa, because you know Argalin's is a good writer. You know, he's great on the podcast. He'd be great over there. Shawn, of course, you know, works in the industry and is a talented man. I think you guys would do good to have him on a couple of your shows.
Yeah, absolutely. We totally were planning on blitzing him with a whole bunch of requests, like literally minutes after we're done here.
Oh, yeah, the floodgates will be open.
No problem.
Welcome to that, bro. You just got bit.
Well, guys, everyone, thank you for being on, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
All right, thanks for having us.
Great. Thanks for having us.
And once again, we would like to say thank you to our guests, Dave Maresca and Jennifer Cifuentes of the Hollow9ine Network. Make sure to go over, listen to some of their podcasts, listen to these people. They know what they're doing, and their shows are highly entertaining. Thank you again to director Shawn Burkett of Don't Fuck in the Woods and the upcoming Don't Fuck in the Woods 2. As more information becomes available on that film, make sure to go over to morbidlybeautiful.com to find out all the news. And of course, fellow writer at Morbidly Beautiful, Argalin Darkscares. Look forward to having Argalin on some more. I always feel like he brings great opinions to the show. Coming up in just a few moments, we're going to go into our final Digital Dismemberment Spotlight for the evening. But before that, we're going to do our final Metal Massacre Spotlight. The name of the band is Fleshgod Apocalypse. The CD is The King, and the song is Cold as Perfection.
your beloved king. I can see your eyes are now scared and veiled by the mist of despair. Do not be conquered by your own fears. Don't let the illusion of perfection seduce you, or you will be lost forever.
And welcome back. You just heard the band Fleshgod Apocalypse. The CD was King, and the song was Cold as Perfection. Fleshgod Apocalypse is an Italian death metal band formed in 2007, and the group resides in Perugia, I think I pronounced that right, and are currently signed to Willowtip Records and Nuclear Blast. They have released 4 full-length albums, most recently King, in February of 2016. Make sure to head on over to their Facebook page and to the Nuclear Blast page to find out when the band is touring, how to pick up merchandise and CDs. But now it's time, ladies and gentlemen, for our final Digital Dismemberment. And in our final Digital Dismemberment Spotlight for the evening, we are going to be covering Scream Factory's Blu-ray release of Tales from the Crypt. And just so you know, this was part of a double feature with Vault of Horror. Now, the particular director for this was Freddie Francis, was produced by Charles W. Fries, Max Rosenberg, and Milton Subotsky. Special effects were handled by Roy Ashton. The cast includes Sir Ralph Richardson, Joan Collins, Martin Bodie, Ian Hendry, Susan Denny, Peter Cushing, Robert Phillips, Richard Green, Barbara Murray, Nigel Patrick, Patrick McGee, and Jeffrey Belden. This was released by Scream Factory on December 2nd of 2014. To kind of give you an idea of what this is about, this is an anthology film. So, when 5 unwary travelers with dark hearts stumble into a series of catacombs, they find themselves in a cavern with no way out. But the horror's only just begun as a mysterious figure appears to reveal each person the shocking events that will lead to their well-deserved, untimely, and unavoidable demise. The film stars, of course, Joan Collins, Peter Cushing, Patrick McGee, and Sir Ralph Richardson, and directed by Freddie Francis. Just the trendsetter when it comes to the anthology style of horror films and the basis for what would become the hit series on HBO from 1989 to 1996, Freddie Francis's film takes stories from the EC Comics Tales from the Crypt, The Haunt of Fear, and Vault of Horror and takes them into the real world. Producer Milton Subotsky convinced fellow Amicus Productions and a host of others to Max Rosenberg, the producer, to pick up the rights along with the blessing of William Gaines after he got script approval. While the film may be considered dated and by many to be tame by today's standards, it is quite amusing to see what passed for PG back in those days. While not a bloodbath, there is a fair amount of violence and blood, with the stories Poetic Justice, Wish You Were Here, and Blind Alleys. One of the nice things about the film is that you do not feel you're being led by the hand into a comic book, but rather the grimness of the stories and the color palettes lend to the stories coming alive. Fans of the HBO series will recognize the first story, and All Through the House, which is the one that features Joan Crawford. Overall, the structural build of the stories all tie together nicely, with great locations and technical aspects. Sound, color, and camera work are all spot on. It has an amazing wealth of acting talent, and with a nice twist ending, the film blends everything together in a way that should satisfy any viewer of the genre. Forgotten for years and highly underrated, this is a great chance for fans and filmmakers alike to see how to properly frame an anthology for horror fans. Now, there will be a few spoiler alerts here as I tell you about some of the stories. As the film opens up with 5 random strangers that appear to have nothing in common with each other, go with a tourist group to view some old catacombs. Even though they are warned that it is dangerous and to stay close to the others on the tour, they manage to get separated from the main group. While wandering to find the others, a mysterious door opens and they find themselves in a room with the mysterious crypt keeper, who gives each one of them a vision of how each of them died. The first one was in All Through the House. On Christmas Eve, Joanne Clayton, played by Joan Collins, murders her husband by striking him in the head with a fireplace poker. While she attempts to hide his body, clean the mess, and avoid letting her young daughter know what she has done, she hears a radio broadcast about a homicidal maniac that has escaped a mental asylum and is on the loose. While trying to clean her own crime scene, she sees the killer, dressed as Santa, outside her house, but can't call the police due to her own murder. Joanne's young daughter, thinking he is the real Santa, unlocks the door and lets him in. He chases through the house and strangles Joanne to death. The second one is Reflection of Death. Cheating husband Carl Maitland leaves his family to be with Susan Blake. He falls asleep in the car and is troubled by his dreams, but manages to wake just in time to be run off the road by a truck and has a car accident. He wakes up in the wrecked car and tries to get help and hitchhike home, but no one will stop for him, almost as if nobody can see him. He finally gets home, but he sees his wife with another man. Confused, he knocks on the door, but she screams and slams the door in his face. Frantic and with no other place to go, he then searches out Susan only to find that she is blind from the accident. He tells her who she is, but she tells him that Carl died 2 years ago from the crash. Stunned, he sees his reflection in a tabletop and sees that his face is that of a corpse. Suddenly, he then wakes up to find out that it was a dream, but the moment he does, the car crash occurs as it did in his dream. The third story is Poetic Justice. Elitist Edward Elliot and his son James can't stand their neighbor, garbage man Arthur, who has a lot of dogs and has the town's children over to his house. The two try everything in their power to get Arthur out of the town, first having his dogs removed, though one of them is brought back to him, then by persuading a member of the council to have him removed from his job. When neither of those works, they spread rumors amongst the town's parents that he is a child molester. So when none of these works, on Valentine's Day, James sends Arthur a series of valentines, supposedly from the townspeople, that drives him to commit suicide by hanging. 1 year later, Arthur comes back from the dead as a rotting corpse and rips James's heart out, leaving it in a letter to his father Edward. The next story was Wish You Were Here. Broke businessman Ralph Jason is in financial ruin. His wife Enid laments their situation and realizes that a Chinese statue in the living room will grant 3 wishes to whoever possesses it, but can't read the last line of the text inscribed on it. Enid wishes for her fortune, and as she does, Ralph's lawyer calls to tell him to come to his office. Ralph leaves, but is killed on the way to his lawyer's office after being followed by a mysterious man on a motorcycle. The lawyer shows up and tells Enid she will inherit a fortune from Ralph's insurance plan. She tells the lawyer of the statue and uses her second wish to bring Ralph back the way he was just before the accident, but learned that his death was due to a heart attack and not a car crash. She then uses her final wish to bring him back alive and to live forever, but soon discovers that he was embalmed. She tries to kill him to end his pain by cutting him up with a sword, but now that every piece of him is alive, he's in eternal torment. The final story is Blind Alleys, and in that one, Major William Rogers, the new head for a home for the blind, makes drastic and severe financial cuts that benefit him, cutting off the heat at night and reducing the quality of food for the residents, all while he lives high on the hog with his large dog Shane. He ignores the complaints of the patients, and when one of them dies due to the cold, the blind residents, led by the enraged George Carter, plan and execute a horrific plan for revenge. After Carter and his group trap the staff, they lure and trap Major Rogers and Shane into 2 separate rooms in the basement of the building. The blind men then begin constructing a maze of narrow corridors, some of them lined with razor blades. They starve Shane, then place the Major in the maze's center and turn off the lights. The Major makes it through the maze and the razors to the other side, cutting himself and bleeding in several places. He then realizes too late that Shane is behind the door on the other side and is hungry. Panicked, he starts to back through the maze, but the lights are cut off as he attempts to escape as Shane rips him apart. Now, after showing each of them their fates and why they are there, the Crypt Keeper reveals that he was not telling them what would happen, but telling them what has happened, and that they have all died without repentance. Is there any chance of redemption for anyone in the group? Can they save their souls and lives? Does the Crypt Keeper have any knowledge of salvation? You're going to have to watch to find out. Now, on this particular side of the disc, there are no bonus features, but it being a part of a 2-disc set, there are features that are discussed on the review of The Vault of Horror, which I'll cover next week. The film does have an aspect ratio of 1080p high definition widescreen, 1781. Scream Factory, again, has brought us a classic horror film that is more than deserving of the Blu-ray upgrade, and the double feature is no exception. Blowing away the previous edition that was part of MGM's Midnight Movies collection in terms of audio and picture quality, the film is a joy to watch in high def. The only lament that comes with this particular film is the fact that there are no bonus features of any kind, including a trailer, no interviews, or even a picture gallery. Normally this would drop the score of the overall package, but since this is a 2-disc set, the second film has features that raise the overall score. But even with the lack of features for this particular film, the quality still stands out. Once again, this release is a perfect example of why Shout Scream Factory is the standard bearer for Blu-ray horror releases. I give the movie a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I give the Blu-ray rating a 7 out of 10. So definitely head on over to Shout and Scream Factory to pick up your copy of Tales from the Crypt. I think it was an absolutely fantastic evening. I want to say thank you once again to my guests, fellow podcaster Dave Maresca and Jennifer Cifuentes of the Hollow9ine Network. Thank you to director Shawn Burkett, and of course writer at Morbidly Beautiful, Argalin Darkscares. I also want to say thank you to Anchor Bay Entertainment for our 3-disc release of Susperia, and thank you to Scream Factory for our Blu-ray copy of Tales from the Crypt. I also want to say thank you to the 3 bands we featured tonight, that being Devilment, Cannabis Corpse, and of course Fleshgod Apocalypse. And until next week, ladies and gentlemen, this is the dead man Michael Jones of MorbidlyBeautiful.com, Coffin Cuties magazine, and Digital Dead magazine, telling you all to rest in peace.